Hello again and welcome to our vlog on the Sam Charter website around the software asset management processes that we put together. This is Kylie Fowler, in case you didn't know. And this month we're going to be talking about the software packaging process.
Can I be really contentious and suggest we should call this something a bit different these days?
Go for it.
Maybe we should call it the software deployment setup process or something like that.
Okay.
But the reason I'm saying that is because packaging, in a sense, is what we used to do to automate the deployment of software. But these days, you've got software all over the ship, and so you need to make sure that you have an efficient way of getting people access to that software, whether it's cloud, whether it's SaaS, whether it's an application. They need to be set up in an application, or whether or not it's the old-fashioned way of creating a package that then gets deployed through, your software deployment tool like a CCM or equivalent. So we talk about packaging, but actually these days it's a lot more. There's loads of different ways of doing this.
There are, yes. I guess we go down the packaging route if there's a sort of a business justification to deploy at scale. Then at that point in an on-premise environment.
Yeah, exactly. If it's a onesie or twosie, then a manual deployment is going to be appropriate. But any more than that, you really want to try and automate deployment as much as possible. And on-premise, particularly for desktops and things, the packaging, the techies will create a deployment package that then can be deployed to a machine, and then the machine will allow you to deploy the software onto the machine much without having the manual stuff. And it means that you've got standardized settings within the software and all of that sort of thing. So packages are great, but we just, as we walk through this process, just bear in mind it's not necessarily just about packaging, that physical creation of a package. It's also about how do we deploy at scale.
And undeploy at scale as well.
Very true, very true. So the thing that triggers this process is that we've had a request. We've done a loop potentially that says, yes, we've bought some software. And now we need to decide, do we want to implement or set up new ways of deploying software at scale? Packaging can be quite expensive, particularly if you outsourced it, because creating the packages and the undeployed packages, or just sort of creating the processes to deploy something can be quite expensive, quite administratively expensive. So a lot of organisations have like a threshold. If you don't think you're going to deploy more than 5 of a piece of software, then they decide not to automate the deployment process. So your techies will do a cost-benefit analysis for how they want to deploy the software, and if they decide they want to automate the deployment, then they might, if in an on-premise world, they might create a package, or they might have some other method of automating the deployment of the software.
Yeah, I've a few engagements I've had. The rule of thumb is generally the larger the organisation, the more they need to scale and build something that's scalable as well. So and it could be existing policy too dictates that actually we are packaging and that is it. The operations director might decide, as happened in one organisation I was working for, I do not want people running around with USB sticks and CDs and DVDs. Interestingly, they had an IBM set up in a far-flung place outside of the UK, and were reliably informed that that's how our IBM iSeries actually works. If we want to deploy software to our IBM iSeries, that's how we do it. So an exception had to be built around that given instance. So you're always going to find exceptions. If you do, deal with it, work around it. Interestingly, again, I've just come from an organisation, financial institution here in London, and they've said they have a 0 level threshold, essentially, on packaging software. So if it goes +1, if we want 1 copy, we package it. End of.
Right, that's interesting. Yeah, goodness. So the key things are to understand whether or not you're going to package something, and then create the package or create the process that deploys the software. It's really important, and it's so often forgotten, to make sure that you can undeploy the software in an automated fashion as well. You will not optimize if it has to be a manual process. Trust me, because it becomes more expensive to run an optimization process and manually undeploy everything than the amount that you are saving as a result of performing the process. So optimization goes out the window unless you can automate it. And this is the point at which you automate the undeployment just as much as you're automating the deployment. So that's a real control. You know, if you are putting something through this process, through your change management, and you're not seeing the automation of the undeployment, tell them to go back and sort it out, because you know, it shuts off so many doors if you can't undeploy in an automated fashion.
And to that point too as well, it's all very well saying that, yeah, the icon off the desktop has gone, the executable is gone as well. But if you've got sort of legacy or ghost.sys or .dll files or any other sort
It's
of
a nightmare.
do not leave the vendor, the software vendor, any remote chance of claiming that is an install of software. Therefore, there is a license requirement there to honour.
So the other critical thing about this process is testing it. Test both the deployment process to make sure that you are seeing the software in your software asset management tool, that you are able to match that deployment to a license in your software asset management tool, i.e. the deployment doesn't look funny, you know. And then B, that you can do the same with the undeployment process, that if you uninstall something, your software asset management tool is recognizing that it can no longer see that piece of software and is therefore freeing up a license. You need to test all of that, otherwise you're going to find that you're causing trouble. You know, you're going to cause problems to yourself down the line. Classic story, I mean, it's a bit old now, but a classic story is all the organizations that had software, Microsoft Office Standard, and they accidentally packaged Microsoft Office Pro. And so I have worked in organisations where they owned thousands of Microsoft Standard licenses.
Was it Pro Plus or Pro?
Or whichever.
Yeah.
And were using thousands of Microsoft Office Pro, it was Pro Plus, you're right, Pro Plus. And the fact that they owned the standard software just did not matter because they were using Pro. So they ended up with this massive non-compliance. And had the package been tested, it would not have happened because the software asset manager would have recognised, hang on, you've packaged Pro, we are licensed for standard. And this is not just packaging, it's everything. So you just need to make sure that you are absolutely testing those deployment and undeployment processes to make sure that they're then recognised in your SAM suite correctly.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Amen.
So what else?
So, if we're sort of swept up and plugged into our service management chums and what they're getting on about with IT, then we look to update the CMDB as well, because that's a configuration item that we've got there. The package itself is a CI.
Absolutely.
So we need to make sure that we've got that acknowledged and identified in the support of any sort of life cycle of IT services that need honouring for the company. Yep.
We also want to update our software catalogue so that we know that there is a package and that it's been tested. And something else I thought of. I can't think what it was.
I don't know. I'm not there yet.
Get
you
me
know.
there,
You know what I mean.
Read my brain. Read my mind.
So we've done the uninstall files. We've done the CMDB. We've done the testing thereof.
Yeah.
I can't think either. You know what's going to happen? We're going to hit stop on this and then you're going to think about it.
Yeah, that's for sure. Should be right.
We should. Well, let's leave it at that. And if it comes back to you later, then we'll call it consultancy and you can charge somebody a fortune for it, all right?
I like that plan. But the key things are, the two really, really important things is, one, automate your undeployments, and two, test your packages, test your deployment process and your undeployment process.
Amen.
To make sure that they work.
Yep.
That's it.
All right then.
Cheers. See you
Until
later.
next month. Take care.